Hello everybody, welcome back to Reading for Vocabulary. I'm your host Brian Stewart. We're going over the same topic. We're talking about caring for animals. But in this lesson, lesson 9, we're going to focus on who helps sick or injured pets. The title, of course, is A Healthy Pet is a Happy Pet. So if your pet is not healthy, what happens? Who helps that pet? Who helps a sick or injured pet? Well, that's what we're going to read about in today's lesson. But as usual, let's learn some vocabulary first. Now, our first word is uh-oh. Here we have a problem, right? Hurt, having a cut or other injury. This poor baseball player looks to be injured, right? Maybe they got hit by the ball or they twisted their leg or something happened or another player ran into that person. So what do we call a person who becomes injured while playing or working or doing whatever, right? You could be walking to school and you can become injured, right? So if you hurt yourself or you get hurt, somebody else hurts you, and you have a cut or you have a bruise, there are many types of injuries, right? Many types of injuries, but you are injured. Part of your body is damaged. That means injured. Now be careful, because injured doesn't mean the same as sick. If you're sick, that means you have a virus or some kind of disease, right, that's affecting your body and you don't feel right. If you're injured, there's been some kind of physical damage to your body, okay? So injury and sickness are different. Remember that, okay? And that's how in the title we had to say who helps sick or injured animals, because they're different. A sick animal is not the same as an injured animal. It's a different type of problem. When you're sick, it's a different problem than if you're injured. Okay, so those are two different conditions. Okay, next one. A medicine that keeps you from getting sick. Now, right, it's terrible, and probably you were in this situation before, but it's very important that you go to the doctor, and the doctor gives you medicine, usually a shot, right, that helps you from becoming sick later. Everybody has it, right? Now, we call these things a vaccine. It's a medicine that you get when you're young to prevent you from getting sick later. Some people still have the bump on their arm from where they got a shot when they were young. Usually it's for smallpox or some other disease like that, like polio. And this is a vaccine. Of course, we live in a very convenient age. The modern age that we live in is very convenient. We don't think about it. But medicine has developed so we can take these vaccines when we're young. We don't have to worry about these diseases. 100 years ago, 200 years ago, people died by the thousands, by the millions from diseases that we don't worry about today because of vaccines. So yes, it hurts, but it's important to get a vaccine. People will say shot. Have you gotten your shots yet? Or I need to get a shot. So to get a shot, get a shot, because it's like a shot that you get in your arm. And that's usually a vaccine for something that will prevent you from getting sick. Nowadays, we hear a lot about the flu shot. The flu shot, it's a vaccine to prevent you from getting the flu, and people will take it every year before winter starts to protect them from the flu. Okay, next one. 3, sharing equally with others. So these two artists or producers, or I'm not sure what's going on here, they're sharing their award equally. What they have, that award, what do they have? They have it in common. If you have something in common with somebody, that means you share that condition or that attribute, right? If you and your mother are very similar in appearance, right? Your appearance, you share your appearance in common. If you and your father have the same sense of humor, right? You share that same sense of humor, then you have a sense of humor in common. It means you have something similar to somebody else. Okay, next one, number 4. Whoa, that's kind of a funny looking picture, right? Here's a little boy, and he's meeting his younger brother or sister, but not yet. His younger brother or sister is still in his mommy's belly, right? having a baby growing inside one. So mom here, what can we say about mom? She has a baby inside of her womb, inside of her belly, right? She is pregnant. So she is pregnant. Sometimes people will say she's with child, but she is pregnant. Okay. Next one, difficult. Something that is very difficult to do, like climb the rocks without a shirt on, that's tough. Okay, I'm just kidding about without the shirt on. It's tough even with a shirt on. But it's difficult, it's tough, right? So they're synonyms, basically. If you say something's very difficult, you can say, oh, it's very tough, right? For example, if you have a difficult test, you can say, whoa, that test was very tough. It was a tough test. It was a difficult test. 너무 힘들어, right? It was tough or it was difficult. Next one. When a doctor cuts you open, and fixes you, that's what's going on here. And this is something that's extreme, right? Oh, thankfully, it's not very common. But sometimes, some people, maybe us, maybe you, maybe me, might have a situation where the doctor needs to actually cut open our body and fix something inside to help cure us. What do we call that procedure? We say it is surgery. Okay? Now, the verb that we usually use with surgery is perform. The doctor will perform surgery. Another way that we call this is operation. An operation. I need to have an operation. So if I'm in the hospital and I say, I have to have an operation, that means the doctor will perform surgery on me, right? The doctor performs surgery on me. I need to have an operation. Those are the common ways that we talk about this situation. Also, surgery can be used as an adjective. For example, the surgery room. This is the surgery preparation room, or this is the surgery area of the hospital. So sometimes surgery can also be an adjective, not just a noun. Okay, but remember, when it is a noun, we usually say perform surgery, and we also say I need to have an operation, or you need an operation. That's the same idea. Okay, so a couple of common expressions for that situation. Next one. A visit to the doctor to check your health. Now, you should do this every year. Some people go every 6 months, right? Maybe when they're younger, it's important to do that. But you need to regularly go to the doctor to check your health. And that's part of the word, right? Check up. Because the doctor needs to check on you. They need to check to make sure you're not sick. It's called a checkup. And usually people go once a year for their annual checkup. Okay, number 8. A person who treats people for sicknesses and injuries. When you go to the doctor to check for sicknesses, or if you have an injury, who do you go to? What do you call that person? I think I just said it, doctor, right? This person, this lady, she is a doctor, right? And there are many different types of doctors, right? Some doctors will only specialize in like the nose, the throat, and the ears. Some doctors will only specialize in treating children. Some doctors will only specialize in fixing broken bones, right? There are many different types of doctors. Okay, number 9. Happening at the same time every time. So this is like something that happens every time. If you wind this up, this is what musicians usually use, right? It goes tick, 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 every time at a certain time. What do we say? It's regular. It's regular. Clocks are regular. They show us the time all the time, every time, right? And 1 hour, they go around the clock regularly. Clocks are very regular. We can depend on them. Sometimes we have habits that are regular. For example, every morning you get up, you take a shower, you brush your teeth, or you eat breakfast, then you brush your teeth. That's your regular morning routine. That's regular. If you do something different, that's unusual, right? That would be the opposite. But happening at the same time, every time, that's regular. Okay, next one. More. right? We have a couple of cows here. A baby cow, right? Animals will have different names for different sexes, right? Male or female. They'll also have different names for their age, right? We don't really say, we can say baby cow, but you could also say calf. Calf is more specific, right? A baby horse, you could say it's a baby horse, or you could say it's a colt, right? You could say a baby dog, or you can say puppy, right? Isn't it interesting? In English, I don't know if it's the same in Korean, but in English we have all these special words for baby animals, and they're usually a lot different, right? There's also cub, right? For bears and lions and tigers have cubs. Dogs have puppies. Horses have colts. Cows have calves. Oh, so many words to remember, okay? But it's very interesting. Okay, next one. Oh, what's wrong with him? He had a bad haircut, right? He should sue his barber. No, I'm just kidding. He wanted it that way, obviously. You have to specifically ask for this type of haircut, okay? Strange and unusual. I'm making a comment about it because it's not normal to see somebody with a haircut like this. It is, yeah, you could say weird, okay? He's strange, he's unusual. You could also say unique. Now, it's interesting because if we say weird, weird has a little bit of a negative feeling to it. If you say it's weird, it's like, oh, that's weird. But if you say it's unique, that can have a little bit of a positive feeling about it. So it depends on how you look at the situation. If you look at him and says, wow, that's cool, he's unique. Or you can look at him and say, oh, that's not good, it's weird. Okay? So be careful using weird, because weird usually means you have a negative feeling about something. Or unique can be if you have a positive feeling about something, but it's strange, it's unusual, then say, oh, that's unique. Okay, so that's more polite or better feeling associated with unique than weird. Okay, so that's interesting about these words here. Next, a container for carrying something. This is a container for carrying something. If you have to carry your pet, for example, you will carry your pet in a carrier. Usually, we only use this word, though, it's usually used for transporting animals, a carrier. If you have a container for carrying your books, you don't call it a carrier, you call it a backpack. If you have a container for carrying your food to school or to your office, we don't really call it a carrier. You could, but it's a little strange. We just say it's a food container, or if you use the brand name, it's Tupperware, right? So carrier is usually specifically used for a container that carries animals for transportation. Next one, number 13. A place where animals are raised for food. Now, a lot of people, they don't know where their food comes from. They think, oh, food comes from the supermarket. But that's not true. Where does the supermarket get the food? The supermarket is not the original place where the food comes from. The food comes from animals, a lot of animals, and also plants, where the animals are raised for food. Like, for example, pork or beef, sogogi, right? If you want to have bulgogi. Oh, I had a hard time just remembering that. Bulgogi or dweji kalbi, right? That meat comes from where? It comes from a farm. Okay? We say it's a farm where animals are raised for food. Okay? Sometimes people will also call it a ranch. But a ranch has a little bit of a different idea. A ranch is much bigger than a farm, and a ranch is usually where you have a lot of cows or cattle. And that's usually where cattle is raised, and it's usually very big. Farms tend to be small, and farms are also places where they grow plants like corn, wheat, things like that. But a ranch is where, usually specifically for cows, we have very big groups, herds of cattle. Okay, so anyway, farm and ranch. Usually we talk about farm, a place where animals are raised for food. Okay, next one. Now, looks like she's doing yoga, right? And she's stretching her body so that her hands are pointing where? They're facing away from the front. Her fingers are pointing away from her front. They are pointing backward. Okay? Now, if you turn around, right now I'm looking at you in the front, but I can turn this way, now I'm looking backward. Okay? It just means facing away from the front, looking backward or stretching backward. Okay. Next one. A doctor who cares for animals. Now, there's a very long word, veterinarian. We'll see that word later in the reading, veterinarian, but that's a 힘들어 word to pronounce. So a lot of people will just say vet. So veterinarian, woo, 너무 힘들어. Just say vet because it's a lot easier, and most people just say vet. A vet is a doctor who cares for animals. But be careful, because vet sometimes also can mean something else that is completely different. A veteran is a soldier who served in a war or served for their country in the military. Sometimes people will call those people a vet too. He's a vet. He served in the Iraq War. They're not talking about a person who cares for animals, okay? So be careful. Vet can mean a former ex-soldier, right? A person who used to be a soldier, or it can be a doctor who cares for animals. So be careful, don't be confused. If somebody says vet, you have to know the situation. What is the context of the situation? Okay. Last word. 간지러. gypja. Okay. A hard cover that goes over a part of your body. Now, unfortunately, this girl, she doesn't seem to be upset about it, but she's been injured, right? She probably broke or sprained her ankle or her foot. So she has to put something on that part of her body to keep the bones from moving. You want to keep the bones in the same position so they can heal together. Now, when I first came to Korea, it was Konglish. People called it gips, right? Gips. But that's Konglish. The word is cast. Now, I was very confused. I was like, why do my students call this a gips? Where does that come from? Well, I learned that this is made of the same material that chalk, white chalk in your classroom is made of, and that's gypsum. Ah, very interesting. So gips comes from the material that the cast is made from, right? And so I don't know where that started, whether it comes from Japan or you know, a lot of Konglish comes from Japan. I don't know where that came from, but somewhere people were thinking, okay, well, a cast is made of gypsum, so they just thought gips, and they called it that. Well, that's Konglish. Americans don't have any idea about that. It confused me when I first heard it. I'm like, where does that come from? We normally just say cast, right? And you put a cast on it, or you wear a cast, just like a shoe or a shirt. You wear a cast, okay? Or you could say the doctor put a cast on my foot. Now, even though you wear it, it's not like a shoe. You can't take it off and put it back on, all right? The doctor puts it on, and then 6 weeks later, the doctor has to cut it off, right? So it's not a normal piece of clothing, but we use the same verb, wear a cast. I have to wear a cast for 6 months. And don't say this, that's Konglish. Okay. Let's review. How well do we remember these words? Let's go over the comprehension questions here. Just the same as usual, we have a blank. We need to choose the best word to fill in the blank. Number 1, smallpox. I talked about that before. Smallpox was a disease 100 years ago, 200 years ago. Terrible disease, killed many, many people. It was a sickness that is gone now, thanks to people getting what? Remember, I told you when you're young, it's important to get that medicine, to get a shot. What's in the shot? Is it a checkup? Is it a vaccine? Is it an injury? Or is it a doctor? Well, of course, it's not a doctor. You can't put a person inside that shot. That's crazy. It's not an injury. That doesn't make sense. It's not a checkup. It's, of course, a vaccine, right? Thanks to people getting the vaccine, smallpox is gone. Nobody ever gets smallpox anymore because medicine has advanced so much that we just get the vaccine and the disease has died out in human beings. It's not there anymore. Okay, number 2. The pilot was beep badly when his plane crashed. Think about that. Somebody's flying a plane and they don't land correctly, the plane crashes. Well, what's going to happen? The pilot was what? Celebrated, injured, pregnant, or treated? You can't get pregnant from crashing your plane. That's crazy, okay? You're probably not going to be celebrated. Was celebrated badly? That doesn't make any sense. Celebrated is a good thing. He was treated badly when his plane crashed? That's possible, actually, right? People said, oh, you shouldn't have crashed a plane. But more logically, he was injured badly. That makes more sense because, of course, when you think about it, if you crash a plane or even if you crash a car or even your bicycle, you crash, you could get badly injured. So be careful when you're in a vehicle or riding your bike. You can become injured badly when your vehicle crashes, whether it's a plane, it's a car, or a bike. Be careful and follow the safety rules and regulations. Okay. Number 5, skipping up to number 5, I get along well with my girlfriend. Do you have a girlfriend or boyfriend? Okay. Do you get along well with that person? We have a lot what? If you get along with your girlfriend, it doesn't have to be girlfriend, it could just be friend. You get along well with your friend because we have a lot of what? Of problems. We have a lot of boredom. We have a lot to forget. Or we have a lot in common. What makes sense? If you have a lot of problems with your girlfriend, you don't get along well. Maybe it's time to break up and go find somebody else who you don't have problems with. We have a lot of boredom. That doesn't make sense, right? You get along with somebody because you're both bored together? That's isangheo. We have a lot to forget. Strange too. We have a lot in common. Remember, in common means you share something with somebody else. So if you share something with somebody else, you can understand them better. So if you have a lot, and we say a lot in common, that's a common expression, we have a lot in common, then you get along with the other person. If you don't get along with somebody, you can say we have nothing in common. That's the pandero. That's the opposite, right? So if you meet somebody and you think they could be my friend, but they're very different from you. They don't like the same things that you do. They don't like the same movies or the same music. They don't like the same books. They don't like the same hobbies that you do. You're not going to be able to spend a lot of time with them because you don't like the things they do. You don't have anything in common. You have nothing in common. But on the other situation, if you have many things in common, you have a lot in common. You like the same books, you like the same hobbies, you like the same movies, then you can get along with that person well. Okay, number 7. I can't believe you're beep and you're going to have twins. Have twins. That means that somebody is going to have babies. Now remember what we talked about. What's that word? If somebody has a baby in their belly, what are they? Are they necessary? Are they small? Are they slow? Or are they pregnant? Well, of course, the only one that makes sense is pregnant. I can't believe you're pregnant and you're going to have twins. Not just one baby, but 2 babies, right? At the same time. You're going to have twins. Necessary doesn't make sense. I can't believe you're small. What does that mean? How does that have to do with twins? And I can't believe you're slow is kind of funny too. The only one that makes sense is pregnant. Okay, well, let's take a break now and we'll come back and go over the reading together. Okay, let's go over the reading together. Now, we're talking about a healthy pet is a happy pet. We're going to be talking about people who take care of sick or injured animals. So let's begin. Doctors help sick and injured people. There are many kinds of doctors. If you break your foot, you go to one doctor. If you have a stomach ache, you see another doctor. Okay, so first of all, this is like an introduction. We're introducing the subject here, and we're starting with something that is familiar to most people. Everybody knows who a doctor is, right? You go to a doctor many times during your life. Hopefully you go to a doctor once a year. When you're younger, you might go to a doctor more than once a year. But we know that doctors help sick and injured people, right? We're talking about people. Everybody knows about this because we go to doctors all the time. There are many kinds of doctors, right? I talked about that before, right? And they give 2 examples. One example, break your foot, you go to one type of doctor. If you have a stomach ache, that's the second example, you see another doctor. This is something that everybody's familiar with. A common way to introduce the subject is the writer will start with something familiar and then narrow down to something more specific. There are even doctors for different kinds of people. Teenagers, babies, women, and children each have their own kind of doctor. But what about animals? Okay, so you see what we've done here. We've started with a more general idea that everybody knows about, and that's doctors. We became a little bit more specific in that area, different types of doctors for different problems, and even different types of doctors for different kinds of people, right? Teenagers, babies, women, and children all have their own type of doctors, right? There are doctors who only treat teenagers. There are doctors who specialize in treating babies, or not treating, but caring for babies, making sure babies are healthy. There are doctors who specialize in women's health. There are doctors who specialize in men's health. There are doctors who specialize in children's development, making sure children are developing correctly with no problems. So they all have their own kind of doctor. That's getting more specific, right? But then we get the most specific, and this is where we find the subject, the topic of our reading passage. But what about animals? They use a question here to introduce the topic of the passage. So a lot of writing passages will use this technique. They'll start with something very broad, very general, everybody knows about it. They'll get a little bit more specific, then they'll ask a question, and that question is the key. That is where you can find the topic of the passage. It introduces or sets up the topic of the passage. Okay, so now we're getting into what the passage is actually about. There are many kinds of animals, but only a few kinds of animal doctors. They are called veterinarians. Veterinarians. It's a difficult word we talked about before. And they have to know a lot. They have to know a lot of things. Okay? So that's our subject. We're going to be talking about veterinarians. Veterinarians. Now, if you have a hard time again pronouncing that word, it's a good idea to try to practice that word so you can pronounce it well. But like we saw before, a lot of people will just say vet or vets for the plural, vets. They are called vets or veterinarians. So here we see there are many kinds of animals, just like there are many kinds of people, but only a few kinds of animal doctors, right? You don't have a different doctor for each type of animal. There's just a few kinds of animal doctors. But they're all called veterinarians. Just like you have many different types of doctors for people, you have special names for them, sure. For example, surgeon, pediatrician, those are special types of doctors, but they're all doctors. Same idea here. Veterinarians means animal doctor. They have to know a lot, of course. These doctors have to know a lot. Most vets care for our pets. Most vets specialize in caring for pets, but other type of veterinarians might specialize in farm animals, right? That's a different type of veterinarian, okay? But most vets care for our pets. Because they are so close to us, we take good care of our pets. So when they hear, because they are so close to us, we're not talking about vets, we're talking about pets, right? They refers back to pets. Our cats, dogs, and other pets should go to the vet at least once a year. Just like we, people, should go to our doctor once a year, pets should also go to their vet once a year, right? So, why? Because they're so close to us. We need to take good care of them, right? So we need to take them to the vet at least once a year because that means we're taking good care of our pets. We're making sure there's no problems with our pets. Okay, now let's take a look. This is a veterinarian caring for the dog. Looks like the dog is in for a checkup. Look, the dog is very relaxed, right? This is a good veterinarian. She's treating the dog, she's listening for the heartbeat, right? Making sure the heart is beating correctly, maybe listening to the lungs. And at the end of the checkup, or maybe during the checkup, she's, petting the dog and encouraging it, right? Because the doggy doesn't understand what it's doing there, right? So the veterinarian, a good veterinarian, will treat the dog well during the checkup. Okay, so like people, they need regular checkups to make sure they are healthy. In fact, they are cared for much the same as people. Now, we have the video to break it up, but we don't need to be confused here because we have they. Sometimes we're not sure what they, a pronoun, refers back to. Of course, in this case, they refer back to pets, right? We just saw the video of the pets. So like people, pets need regular checkups to make sure pets are healthy. Of course, you don't want to keep repeating pets, 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 so that's why we use pronouns. But be careful to make sure that you know what noun, what proper noun that pronoun refers back to. Okay? In fact, they, pets, are cared for much the same as people. So when the dog or the cat or your pet, whatever it is, goes to the veterinarian, they're cared for in much the same way that people are. And you saw the doctor listening to the heart of the dog. And that's what doctors do too, to people. They will listen to your heartbeat to make sure it's okay. Because if you think about it, our bodies are very similar to animals, right? We are just another type of animal, really. We have hearts, pets have hearts. We have lungs, pets have lungs. Right? We have skin, pets have skin. So a lot of the procedures or a lot of the checkup is the same thing, much the same as people. Not exactly the same, but pretty similar. They get vaccines to keep them from getting sick. They have surgery, and they even wear a cast if they break a leg. These are more examples of how treating for sick or injured pets is the same as people. It's the same. They get vaccines. Pets, of course. We're still talking about pets, right? They still refer back to pets. Pets get vaccines to keep them from getting sick. People get vaccines to keep us from getting sick. They, pets, have surgery. People have surgery. And they, pets, even wear a cast if they break a leg. Well, it's the same thing with people. So in many ways, treating for pets is the same as treating for people in many ways. But all animals are not treated the same. Each one gets different sicknesses, eats different foods, and behaves differently. A vet has to know what is right for each and every pet they see. So even though some of the treatment is similar, right? You do the same thing if the pet has a broken leg. Maybe you give surgery on different types of pets for maybe the same problem, right? Those things are similar. But if you think about it, it's not all the same, right? Because a dog, of course, is different from a cat. And a bird is different from a dog as well, right? So depending on what kind of animal you have, or even if it's a veterinarian who doesn't take care of pets, but takes care of farm animals like cows and horses, there will be different procedures because the sickness of a cow, cows will get certain diseases that dogs don't get. Pigs get certain sicknesses that cats don't get. So they get different sicknesses. Of course, they eat different foods. The cows don't eat this. Cows don't eat dog food, right? What they do with dog food, okay? And of course, they behave differently also. Cows don't sit and come when we call them, okay? Okay, but so because there's many different types of animals, different behaviors, different diets, a vet has to know what is right for each and every pet they see. And it's not just pet either. Cows are not pets. Right? So it's not just pets, but vets will treat pets and they'll also treat farm animals. So a vet has to know all these different things, right? So it's a little bit more complicated than just being a doctor. Treating farm animals can be weird, right? And maybe a little negative too. Treating farm animals can be weird. What's an example? Can you imagine putting your hand up a cow's bottom? Gross. Vets do it to pregnant cows to make sure their calves are growing right. So the vet will put her hand or his hand up the cow's bottom to check on the calf, the baby cow inside the mama cow, right? To make sure that it's okay. Of course, they don't just stick their hand in. They usually put a really long plastic glove in there because you don't want to put your bare hand. Ugh, that's gross, right? Ugh. What do we say? Yuck, right? Ugh. Okay. So, but they have to do that because they have to make sure that the baby cow is in the right position and that it's growing correctly. Okay. So that's kind of weird. That's what they're talking about. Can you imagine doing that? Well, vets do it a lot to pregnant cows because they want to make sure that the babies are okay. Next, there is one thing most animals have in common. They hate going to the vet. Here's a tip for bringing your cat to the vet. Now, many pets, if they know you're going to take it to the vet, they don't want to go because, like I said before, animals usually don't like to go there. They don't understand what's going on. They go there, they know that there's other animals there. Some of those animals seem to be being hurt because they're getting shot or maybe they're having surgery, so they can sense that. And they also, it's kind of strange, there's a strange person touching them and doing strange things to them and maybe hurting them by giving them a shot. And they remember that and they don't want to go back, right? So they hate going to the vet. And that's one thing that most animals, not all animals, but most animals have in common. They all share that memory. So here's a tip. Here's a tip means here's good advice for bringing your cat to the vet. If you have a cat that hates going to the vet, really doesn't want to go, what's some good advice for bringing your cat to the vet? Well, putting a cat in a carrier can be tough, right? If you want to take your cat, you put it in the carrier, the cat doesn't want to get in the carrier. It's a small space and the cat doesn't feel comfortable and the cat remembers, if I go in the carrier, I'm going to that bad place where that person's going to stick me and hurt me. So when they see the carrier, they start fighting. They run away and they start fighting you, scratching you, right? Well, put them in backward. In other words, take the cat and don't let the cat see the carrier and put the cat in backwards. Not in the front, but in backwards. That way, they don't know where they are going. They can't see where you're putting them until it's too late. You put them in the carrier, like, oh, I'm in the carrier, clip, and then you got them in the carrier. If you put them in front first, they're like, no, I don't want to go there. But if you put them in backwards, they don't know until they're in the carrier. That's what they're saying. This is a tip, some advice for putting a nervous cat into a carrier. Okay, let's talk about the story. How well do you remember the passage, the reading passage? Well, again, question number 1 is usually about the topic. This story is about beep, right? What is this story about? This story is about A, doctors, B, pets, C, how vets care for animals, or D, how to care for your pets. So is this story about doctors? No, it started out talking about doctors, but remember, that was the technique the writer was using, starting off with something general, but getting to the subject, right? What about animals, right? So we're not talking about doctors for like doctors who take care of people. We're not talking about pets, right? We're not talking about pets. We're talking about the people who take care of pets, right? C is our answer, how vets care for animals. This story is about how vets care for animals because that's what we learned about, right? We saw how do vets care for animals. D, how to care for your pets. That means how you care for your pets, how to care for your pets. That's not what we were talking about. We were talking about how vets care for animals, not how you take care of your animals, but how veterinarians take care of animals. So that is the subject of our reading passage. Okay, next one, number 2. Like people. So we talked about this. Caring for pets is sometimes similar to caring for people. So, like people, animals, what? What's one way that animals and people are the same? A, hate going to the vet. Now, this could be a little bit tricky. Like people, animals hate going to the vet. Now, maybe a lot of people hate going to the doctor. But people don't hate going to the vet. They don't care because the vet is not going to treat them, right? So that doesn't make sense, right? Like people, animals are all treated the same. No, people are not treated the same. Animals are not treated the same. There are different types of people. There are different types of animals. So they're not all treated the same. There might be some similar ways, but they're not all treated the same. Like people, animals what? Get vaccines. Is that true? Yes, that is true. People get vaccines. Animals will also get vaccines. That is one of the ways that caring medical care for people and animals are the same. We saw different examples. Vaccine is one of them. Breaking a leg is another one. Having surgery is another one. Those were all in the reading passage. D, have many different doctors. Like people, animals have many different doctors. That doesn't fit. The best answer is they get vaccines. Okay, number 3, we have a blank at the beginning. What is an important part of keeping our pets healthy? What is an important part of keeping our pets healthy? A, different foods are an important part of keeping our pets healthy. Did the reading passage talk about that? No, the reading passage didn't say anything about giving your pet different foods. It didn't talk about that. B, regular checkups are an important part of keeping our pets healthy. The passage did talk about that. That is the answer. Regular checkups are an important part of keeping our pets healthy. What about C? Stomach aches are an important part. What? Stomach aches are an important part of being healthy? That's crazy. That doesn't make sense. Treating farm animals is an important part of keeping our pets healthy. How does treating farm animals affect our pets at home? That doesn't match. There's no connection. So, as we can see, B is the only correct answer. Regular checkups are an important part of keeping our pets healthy. By the way, regular checkups is also an important part of keeping you healthy, ourselves healthy. So make sure you visit a doctor at least once a year. Okay, next one. Number 4. A vet has to know more than a doctor because. Why does a veterinarian, have to know more than a doctor? Why? Well, the passage said something about that. A, all animals get sick. B, animals need surgery sometimes. C, animals need vaccines. And D, there are many kinds of animals. So which is the answer? Why do vets need to know more than a doctor? A person doctor, a doctor who treats people. Why? Because all animals get sick? That's not true. Some animals don't get sick. They go through their lives without getting sick. Animals need surgery sometimes. So what? People need surgery sometimes too. So that doesn't make sense. Animals need vaccines. Well, again, people need vaccines too. So it doesn't explain why a vet needs to know more than doctors. What about D? Because there are many kinds of animals. Okay. Sure, there are many kinds of people, but they're just usually, people are pretty much the same. They're just different stages, right? Baby, children, teenager, and adults, right? But there's a lot of difference between a cat and a dog. There's more difference between a cat and a dog than there is between a baby human being and an adult human being, right? So vets need to know about all these different types of animals. So that's the answer, D. A vet has to know more than a doctor because there are many kinds of animals. And that was in the reading passage. Okay, so that wraps it up for this lesson. In this lesson, we learned a little bit more about veterinarians, right? Veterinarians are special doctors who take care of animals, especially pets. But remember, there are other types of veterinarians too that take care of farm animals, and maybe some veterinarians that take care of certain special animals, maybe at zoos or at circuses, for example. And these are different types of animals than maybe farm animals or the animals in your house. Okay, there's a few different types of vets. Vets have to know a lot. If you're considering becoming a veterinarian, this might be an interesting passage to you. You have to study hard, you have to know a lot about animals, and more importantly, you have to love animals and love taking care of animals. If you do, why not consider becoming a vet? It could be a very rewarding career for you. Okay, well that about wraps it up for today. We'll see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.